Wounded Apache girl whispers, "I will give you my body, just feed me." Then a cowboy steps in. The twin suns of New Arizona burned hot over the endless desert. Dust swirled across the cracked earth, making the horizon shimmer like heat waves on a frying pan. The land was empty and quiet, except for the occasional whistle of wind and the faint hum of old machinery buried under the sand. Jace Core rode alone. His horse was gone long ago, replaced with a small hovering bike that hummed quietly under him. His black hat shaded his eyes, and the metal of his cybernetic arm glinted in the sunlight. Jace had been wandering this wasteland for days. Food and water were scarce, and settlements were far apart. He had heard stories of robotic marauders roaming the desert, attacking anyone unlucky enough to cross their path. But he wasn't afraid. He had survived worse. Still, something about this particular morning felt different. A faint sound reached his ears. At first he thought it was the wind. Then he heard it again. A soft whisper, barely audible, carried by the hot breeze. Jace stopped the bike and listened. There it was again, a fragile voice calling for help. He frowned and looked around. The desert stretched for miles in all directions. There was no one in sight. Then he saw her. She was lying among the rocks and twisted cacti, her small body pressed against the earth. Her clothes were torn and blood had soaked the fabric near her shoulder. Dust clung to her skin and hair, making her look almost like a statue in the desert. She had dark eyes, wide and frightened, and her lips moved as she whispered something he could barely understand. Jace slowed the bike and knelt beside her. "Hey," he said gently. "You okay?" The girl's eyes widened, and she flinched.
She tried to push herself up, but collapsed again.
I don't survive, she whispered, her voice trembling. "Just feed me, please." Jace looked around. She had a small crate next to her. He opened it carefully and saw a few glowing food rations. They were alien, probably scavenged from some old outpost. She was offering everything she had, her only chance to survive, to anyone who would help her. Jace felt a twinge of sympathy. "You don't have to give me anything," he said. "I'll help you. Just stay still." Her lips quivered. I cannot alone," she said. The words were broken, like she hadn't spoken in days. Jace took off his backpack and pulled out a water tube, carefully handing it to her. She drank slowly, barely able to swallow, but it gave her some strength. He examined her wounds. Nothing looked fatal, but infection could come quickly in this heat. "Can you walk?" he asked. "No, too weak." Marauders, chasing. Her eyes darted to the horizon. Jace looked and saw nothing yet, but he knew the desert well. "Robots, huh?" he muttered. "Then we'd better move fast." He lifted her carefully into his arms, feeling her trembling against him. She was light, almost fragile, but there was a strange determination in her eyes. The bike hummed as they took off across the desert. Jace kept one hand on the controls, the other supporting her. Sand whipped past them, and the heat pressed down like a heavy blanket. She coughed softly, and he gave her more water. "Going?" she asked weakly. "Anywhere safe," Jace said. "I know a place a few miles from here. You can rest there." She nodded slowly, biting her lip as if she didn't trust him fully yet. Jace didn't mind. Trust had to be earned, especially in these parts. As they rode, the desert changed. The sand became harder, dotted with ruins of old buildings and broken machines. The girl's eyes lit up a little. "My people used to live here," she whispered. "Many years." She wasn't just lost. She was a survivor of something bigger. Probably a raid, maybe by the robotic marauders she had mentioned. He wondered how many she had lost. Suddenly, the wind shifted. A faint mechanical whirring reached his ears. Jace froze, scanning the horizon. There, glinting in the sun, he saw them. 3 drone-like machines hovering above the desert, their sensors scanning for movement. They had sharp claws and glowing red eyes. These were the kind of marauders that could tear through anything in seconds. "Hold on," Jace muttered. He adjusted the bike's speed, weaving through the ruined buildings and rocks to avoid detection. The girl held tight, silent now, her eyes wide with fear. Jace's heart beat faster, not from fear but from focus. He had faced these things before, but never while carrying someone fragile like this. They ducked behind a crumbled wall. The drones scanned the area, their sensors glowing. Jace kept perfectly still, holding his breath. The girl leaned into him. "They find us," she whispered. "Not if we stay quiet," Jace said. "We just need to get to cover. Follow me." Using the shadows of the ruins, they crept toward a narrow canyon. The drone's red eyes swept the desert, then moved on. Jace exhaled slowly. That was close. The girl gave a small, grateful smile. It was weak, but genuine. "Thank you," she whispered. "Name, Jace?" "Jace Core," he said, offering a small smile. "And you are?" "Apache." Her voice faded as exhaustion took over. Jace nodded. He knew the Apache tribes were scattered across the desert, often hunted by machines and raiders. Lila must have survived by hiding and moving quickly. She had resourcefulness, that was clear. They found a small alcove in the canyon where the sun didn't reach. Jace laid her down gently and pulled out a medkit. He cleaned her wounds and applied bandages. She winced but didn't complain. "You're tough," he said. "I must," she whispered. "Or die." Jace nodded. There was something about her that reminded him of his younger sister, long gone. He had lost people before, and he knew that survival often depended on courage and quick thinking. Lila had both. Night began to fall. The twin moons rose above the desert, casting an eerie glow over the sand and ruins. Jace built a small fire for warmth and cooked a portion of the alien rations. He offered some to Lila, who ate slowly, savoring each bite. "I never had enough," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "Always hiding, always running." Jace nodded. "I know what that's like, but you're safe here, for now." She looked at him with wide eyes. "Safe, then we move again. Can't stay in one place too long. Drones smell life from miles away." Lila shivered but nodded. She trusted him, at least a little. Trust was rare in these parts, but she saw something in Jace, a protector, someone who could keep her alive. As they settled for the night, the desert was quiet, but Jace knew better. The wind carried whispers of danger, and the drones would return. Tomorrow they would need to move fast, find water and maybe shelter. Survival was never easy here, yet in that quiet moment, as Lila rested and Jace kept watch, a bond began to form. Two strangers thrown together by fate, finding trust in a harsh world, each relying on the other to survive. And somewhere in the distance, hidden behind the dunes, the faint whir of drones continued. They were not done yet, but for now, under the glow of twin moons, two survivors found a brief, fragile peace in the desert. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert, turning the sand into a sea of gold. The wind had died down, but the heat already pressed heavily on everything. Jace Core awoke first, checking Lila carefully. She was still weak, but she had slept for a few hours, enough to regain a little strength. He poured some water into a small cup and helped her drink. "Better?" he asked.
Lila nodded, slowly.
"A little stronger," she whispered. Her dark eyes were alert now, scanning the ruins around them. "We move?" "Yes," Jace said. He packed up the small camp, folding the medkit and placing it in his pack. He lifted Lila onto the hoverbike, careful not to jostle her. "We need to get to a safer place, somewhere far from the drones." Broken skyscrapers and rusted machinery from the old colonies created a maze of shadows. Jace guided the bike carefully, keeping low to avoid detection. Lila held tightly, her small hands gripping his jacket. "See us?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Not yet," Jace said. "But I can hear them coming. Drones don't rest." He listened closely. The faint whirring had returned, like a heartbeat in the sand. Suddenly, 3 drones appeared over a distant ridge, their glowing red eyes scanning the area. Jace cursed under his breath. "Time to move faster." He pressed a lever on the bike, and the engines roared. Dust and sand rose behind them in thick clouds as they sped across the desert. The drones followed, their metallic wings slicing through the air. Jace zigzagged between ruins, using the crumbling buildings as cover. Lila's face was pale, but she didn't scream or panic. She trusted him, and that gave Jace focus. "Hold on!" he shouted, diving the bike through a narrow canyon. Rocks scraped against the sides, but they held. The drone's sensors glowed as they tried to follow, but the narrow canyon blocked them. Lila exhaled sharply. "You smart," she whispered. Jace gave a small grin. "Years of practice." He kept the bike low, moving like a shadow across the desert floor. He glanced at her. "Can you handle a bit more speed?" She nodded. "Try." For the next hour, they raced across the ruins, ducking under collapsed towers and skimming over sand dunes. The drones stayed on their trail, but Jace's skill and the girl's instincts kept them ahead. Lila pointed out hidden energy pods and small patches of water along the way, treasures left behind by old explorers. "Drink? Here," she said, guiding him to a small spring hidden under a rock formation. Jace let her drink first. The water was warm but clean, and she drank deeply, regaining some strength. "Good eye," he said. "You've been surviving out here for a while, haven't you?" "Last attack, my family gone." Her voice shook, but she didn't cry. "Drones took all." Jace felt a pang in his chest. He understood loss. He had lost friends, towns, even his home in distant colonies. But showing weakness now wouldn't help either of them. He simply nodded. "We'll keep going. We'll survive this." As the sun climbed higher, the heat became unbearable. They had to find shade soon. Jace spotted an old building, half buried in sand. Its walls were cracked and pockmarked, but it offered a temporary hiding spot. He pulled the bike inside, and they crouched behind a fallen wall. The drones scanned the area, their red eyes cutting through the shadows. Jace held his breath. Lila pressed against him, silent but tense. The whirring passed by, then faded. For now they were safe. "You always alone?" Lila asked after a moment, her voice soft. "Mostly," Jace admitted. "Life in the desert teaches you to trust few people. Too many betray or disappear." She nodded, understanding. "I, alone too, must hide, run, survive." They shared a quiet moment, two survivors in a harsh world. Despite their fear, a bond was forming. They relied on each other, Jace's strength and skill, Lila's knowledge and courage. Together, they could face what the desert threw at them. Night began to fall. The sky turned shades of red and purple, and the temperature dropped slightly. Jace found a small canyon that would block the drone's sensors. They set up a temporary camp, using old metal sheets and debris to shield themselves. Lila prepared a few energy rations, sharing them with Jace. "I grateful," she whispered, "for help." "Don't thank me yet," Jace said. "We're not out of danger." A soft rustling reached them. Jace raised his hand. "Stay quiet." The wind carried the faint sound of movement, small, deliberate steps. From the shadows emerged a pack of mutated desert animals, their skin tough and cracked from solar flares, eyes glowing faintly. Jace grabbed a makeshift weapon, a pipe he had modified into a stun rod. The animals hissed and circled. Lila stepped back but didn't run. She had sharp instincts. "Left side weak, attack now," she whispered. Jace nodded. Using her guidance, he moved swiftly, shocking two of the creatures with the rod. The others scattered, startled by the sudden attack. The desert fell silent again. "You good," Wheela said, eyes wide. "Stronger than appear. You're not so bad yourself." The rest of the night passed quietly. They took turns keeping watch, listening for drones or other threats. Lila told Jace about her people, about the small Apache settlements scattered across New Arizona, and how they had survived through knowledge of the desert and trust in each other. Jace shared stories of distant colonies, of towns burned and friends lost. Through their stories, the two strangers grew closer. Survival was not just about fighting. It was about learning, understanding, and sometimes trusting someone else completely. By dawn, the desert was quiet again. The drones had not returned, but Jace knew it was only a matter of time. They had to keep moving, find water and shelter, and stay ahead of the machines. He lifted Lila onto the bike. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. "Ready." They rode into the rising sun, two figures against the vast desert, moving as shadows among ruins and sand dunes. The drones would follow, the desert would test them, but together they had a chance. And somewhere far behind, the faint red glow of drone sensors marked the start of a long chase. Jace and Lila were not safe yet, but they were surviving. And survival, in this desert, was everything. Jace, Core, and Lila had ridden for hours through the shifting desert, leaving behind the ruins of old colonies and the shallow trails of sand. By midday, the sun burned hotter than ever, and the distant hum of drones reminded them that the machines were never far. They needed a plan, and they needed shelter, somewhere the drones could not reach easily. Ahead, rising out of the desert like a phantom from the past, was a massive structure. Its walls were smooth and silver, reflecting sunlight so brightly that they almost seemed alive. "This place dangerous," she whispered. "Many drones inside.
Looks like their main base.
And it's huge."
But if we want to stop them from hunting your people, we have to go in.
"I know secret path. Few know, only survive if careful. Lead the way. Quiet and careful, right? Lila led them across a series of cracked walkways and hidden tunnels. She moved silently, her small form slipping through gaps and shadows. Jace followed, careful to keep his bike folded and tucked under debris. The closer they got to the stronghold, the more alien the landscape became. Walls shimmered faintly with energy, and strange patterns of light crawled across the surface like circuits alive with thought. Finally, they reached a narrow opening in the wall, almost invisible to the untrained eye. Lila gestured for him to stop. "Here. Go slow," she whispered. Jace nodded and stepped through. The air inside the stronghold was cooler, almost alive with hums of energy. They had entered a massive chamber filled with glowing panels, cables running like veins across the walls, and the occasional drone patrolling silently overhead. It was clear this was the center of the Marauders' operations. "This bad place," Leela whispered. "Many drones, strong. We careful." Jace scanned the room. "All right, we need a plan." He crouched beside her and examined the pathways. "If we can reach that core over there," he said, pointing to a central platform glowing with bright blue light, "we can shut down the drones. But we'll have to avoid patrols and traps." Lila's eyes flickered with determination. "I know. Trap patterns. Follow me." They moved together, silent shadows weaving through the maze of metal and light. The drone's sensors glowed red briefly as they passed nearby, but Lila's knowledge of the stronghold's hidden passages kept them safe. She pointed out small gaps, energy conduits, and weak floors that could support only their weight. Jace followed, careful not to make a sound. At one point, a patrol drone turned the corner unexpectedly. Jace froze. Leela grabbed his arm and pulled him into a shadowed recess. The drone's sensors scanned the floor and walls, humming louder as if sensing movement, then slowly moved on. Jace exhaled quietly. "Nice save," he whispered.
Lina.
"Quick. Must survive." They continued deeper, moving past rooms filled with strange machines and alien technology.
Lila explained what she knew.
These drones, controlled by AI core. Core gone, drones stop.
Jace nodded. "That's our target."
"Let's get there before more patrols come back." As they neared the central core, the corridors became more complex. Energy fields crisscrossed the floors, forcing them to time their steps perfectly. Lila counted each pulse and whispered the rhythm to Jace. With careful coordination, they crossed without triggering alarms. Finally, they arrived at the core chamber. The platform was massive, humming with bright blue energy. Panels flashed rapidly, and the drones in the room seemed to orbit it like guardians. Jace studied it. "We need to overload this thing. But if we do it wrong..." He trailed off, thinking of the consequences. Leela stepped forward. "I help. I know old tech. My people used similar patterns." Jace looked at her, impressed. "All right, we do it together. I'll handle the physical side. Wires, circuits, any defense. You guide the energy pulses." "Can you do that?" "Yes, must. Survive. Save others." They set to work. Jace pulled panels off, exposing a web of glowing wires. Sparks flew as he carefully rerouted circuits to redirect energy. Lila crouched beside him, tracing patterns on the glowing conduits with her fingers, murmuring calculations and sequences. Together, they became a synchronized team. The room shook suddenly as a sentinel drone descended from above. It was massive, far larger than any patrol they had faced. Its glowing eyes scanned the chamber, and its heavy metal feet shook the floor with every step. "Time for distractions," Jace muttered. He grabbed a loose panel and threw it across the room. Sparks flew, and the sentinel's eyes turned toward the noise. Lila didn't flinch. "Now pulse," she shouted. Jace and Lila coordinated perfectly. Energy surged through the wires, redirecting to the core. The blue glow flared, brighter than before, and the sentinel stumbled, its systems overloaded temporarily. Red lights flashed across the chamber as alarms began to wail. "Almost done," Lila shouted. Her small hands moved swiftly, manipulating the energy fields with precision. Jace guided the final connections, sweat dripping down his face. Then, with a loud hum and a burst of light, the core overloaded. Sparks and energy arcs filled the room as the drones powered down one by one, their systems shutting off. The sentinel crashed to the floor with a metallic roar, finally silent. Jace and Lila collapsed against the wall, exhausted but victorious. "We did it," Jace said, barely able to catch his breath.
Lila smiled weakly. Yes.
We survive. Many survive. They took a moment to rest, catching their breath and drinking from small water canisters. The core shutdown had quieted the chamber. For now, the Marauders' drones were gone and the stronghold was safe, or as safe as it could be. Good work, Jace said, looking at Lila. You were incredible in there. She shook her head. We, together, must help others. Her eyes were fierce, determined. Many need survive. My people safe now? Jace thought for a moment. Not completely, but this is a start. We can warn your people, help them prepare. The drones won't bother them again, at least for a while.
Lila nodded, relief flooding her features.
Thank you, Jace. You saved me. No, Jace said. We saved each other. The two sat in silence for a moment, listening to the faint hum of the now dormant stronghold. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, but for the first time it didn't feel entirely hostile. They had a chance, a hope, and most importantly, a bond forged in danger and trust. But even as they rested, the hum of distant drones could still be heard far across the desert. The war was not over. They had won this battle, but the desert and the Marauders had many tricks left. Jace knew they would have to move again, find safer ground, and protect the Apache settlements from future attacks. Lila looked at him, her eyes bright with resolve. We, together, always survive. Jace nodded. Together. And with that, the two survivors rose, ready to leave the stronghold and continue their journey. They had faced impossible odds, but they had learned to trust, to fight, and to rely on each other. The desert was still dangerous, but for the first time, they didn't feel entirely alone. As they stepped out into the morning light, the stronghold behind them silent and lifeless, they knew that the next challenge awaited. The desert was vast, the drones relentless, but Jace and Lila were ready. Together, they could face anything. The desert stretched endlessly in front of Jace, Core, and Lila, bathed in the pale light of dawn. The twin suns were still low on the horizon, painting the sand in shades of gold and red. Behind them, the alien stronghold lay silent and dormant, a monument to their victory over the Marauders' drones. Yet, the desert was never quiet for long. Jace lifted the hoverbike onto a narrow path hidden between jagged rocks. Lila clutched a small satchel with supplies and the glowing energy pods they had recovered from the stronghold. Where go next? She asked, her voice steady now, no longer trembling. Jace scanned the horizon. We need to reach your people's settlements. Let them know the drones are down, at least for now. They'll need food, water, and a plan if the machines return. Lila nodded, her dark hair swaying with the wind. Yes, help them.
Many scared.
She looked at him with a faint smile. Thank you, Jace. Without the you? Jace waved it off. We saved each other, remember? Now let's keep moving. No time for thanks. The ride through the desert was long and tense. Though the Marauders' drones were offline, the desert itself was unforgiving. Heat shimmered off the sand, and jagged rocks and sudden drops made navigation tricky. Lila guided Jace toward hidden paths known only to her people. Together, they avoided dangerous cliffs, sand traps, and the occasional pack of mutated desert wildlife. Careful here, Lila whispered, pointing to a thin ridge. Jace leaned the bike carefully, keeping the balance. The hoverbike skimmed the edge of the cliff, sand and rocks tumbling below. It was a dangerous maneuver, but Lila's guidance kept them safe. By midday, they reached a small valley. In the distance, the outline of a settlement emerged. Tents made from salvaged materials, small wind turbines spinning lazily, and families moving cautiously among the structures. Jace slowed the bike, letting them approach quietly. Lila's eyes widened. Home? Safe? She asked softly, scanning the area. Let's find out, Jace said. He helped her down from the bike, and they moved toward the settlement. Children peeked from behind walls, and adults paused, wary of strangers. Lila stepped forward bravely. Me, Lila, she called out. Safe. Drones. Gone. At first there was silence. Then a few villagers emerged cautiously. One of them, an elder with silver streaks in his hair, stepped forward. Lila? He asked, his voice shaky but filled with relief. Yes, me, she said. Help, Jace. Drone's stronghold. Gone. Safe now. The elder's eyes widened, and he stepped closer to embrace her. The villagers gathered, murmuring in relief. They had feared their worst, that the drones would return to wipe them out. But now, thanks to Lila and her mysterious companion, they were safe. Jace stayed back, letting Lila reunite with her people. He knew his job here was not over, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of satisfaction. 2 survivors against impossible odds had succeeded. Later that evening, as the settlement settled into calm, Jace and Lila stood on a small hill overlooking the village. The twin moons had risen, casting a soft glow over the valley. "You helped many," Lila said, her voice quiet. "Without you. Don't forget," Jace said. "You guided me too. You knew the paths, the traps, the survival tricks. Without you, we wouldn't have made it into the stronghold." She nodded, smiling faintly. Together, strong. They sat quietly, watching the village below. Children played near small water pools, and families prepared food from the energy pods they had brought. For a moment, the desert felt less like a wasteland and more like a place where life could survive. The night was calm, but Jace knew the desert could change at any moment. Marauders could rebuild, new dangers could appear, and survival would always require courage and vigilance. But for now, they had accomplished something remarkable. They had turned the tide, even if only temporarily. "Tomorrow," Jace said, breaking the silence, "we teach them to protect themselves. We show them the hidden paths, where to hide, and how to avoid the drones if they ever come back." Lila's eyes lit up with determination. Yes, they learned survive. They spent the rest of the night preparing for the next steps. Jace showed the villagers how to set up simple alarms and defenses. Lila shared her knowledge of the desert, pointing out hidden water sources and safe routes through the dunes. Together they combined experience and instinct, technology and tradition, to make the settlement as secure as possible. By morning, the village had a sense of hope it had not felt in years. Children ran freely, women and men worked together, and the villagers looked to Jace and Lila as guides. The desert, once a place of fear, was now a land of possibility. Before leaving the village, Jace and Lila stood at the edge of the valley. "You stay?" Lila asked, hope flickering in her eyes. Jace smiled faintly. "My place is out there," he said, nodding toward the desert. "But I'll come back. If you need me, I'll be here." Lila smiled, a mixture of relief and gratitude. "No. Always survive." With that, Jace mounted his hoverbike and Lila waved. They rode toward the rising sun, shadows stretching across the dunes. Though the desert was vast and the dangers many, Jace felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was no longer just a lone wanderer. He had allies, friends, and a reason to fight. As they disappeared into the horizon, the settlement below was safe, at least for now. The drones had been defeated, and the villagers had the knowledge to protect themselves. Lila's people could rebuild, and Jace had helped them see that survival in this harsh world was possible, not just for one, but for many. The desert remained wild, and the adventure was far from over. But Jace and Lila had proven that courage, trust, and teamwork could overcome even the deadliest machines. And in the quiet desert night, under the glow of twin moons, a bond forged in danger promised new adventures and a hope that the wasteland could one day become a place of life. They rode on, 2 figures against the endless desert, carrying with them the lessons of survival, the trust of friendship, and the promise of a future where even the harshest land could be tamed. The desert wind whispered through the dunes, carrying with it the echoes of battles fought, victories won, and the promise of more stories waiting to unfold. And somewhere far beyond the horizon, Jace knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. For now, though, they rode in silence, letting the desert and the sun guide their path. 2 survivors, stronger for what they had endured, ready to face whatever the wasteland had in store.